we
Yeah.
obviously know we're messing with about maybe 40 million in cap space. There's some positions that a lot of 49er fans have discussed bringing in certain players. I mentioned 3 here, but I think I want to add wide receiver to that list too, Rohan. I'm sure you have some names there as well. So let's talk about these type of positions: safety, corner, D-line, and let's add wide receiver to that as well. What is the caliber of player that the 49ers could afford to bring in with the way that the cap situation is and the way the roster makeup is right now?
Sure. So I'll start probably. Let's go with cornerback to start.
Okay.
The 49ers, in my opinion, I think are looking to address cornerback definitely in free agency, as opposed to maybe taking with one of their first picks in the draft. And I think that the 49ers will target a mid-tier cornerback in free agency. So we've heard guys like J.C. Jackson, who likely gets 20 plus million a year. I don't think that J.C. Jackson is going to be on the radar necessarily as a priority for the 49ers, although I'm sure that they're going to call in and be interested. And then in addition, we've heard guys like Stephon Gilmore. And I think that Stephon Gilmore probably is at the peak of their price range, because especially if Stephon Gilmore takes somewhat of a pay cut to play for the 49ers, by pay cut, I mean in the 12, 13 million range rather than the 15 million I expect him to command from a team. And if he signs a 2-year, $26 million deal, I'd be totally fine with that, because Stephon Gilmore would bring leadership at 31 years old. And I thought I was one of the proponents for bringing in Stephon Gilmore, because he's 31 or going into his 31 season, I believe. And he's a very solid man press corner still. He's not yet like a shell of his former self. I think he's still at the tail end of his prime, and he'd be very helpful to a guy like Ambry Thomas, who also is that man press corner who's learning to play zone in the San Francisco defense, similar to how Richard Sherman was with Emmanuel Mosley when Richard Sherman was a part of this team. So looking on to get leadership in that secondary, Stephon Gilmore could definitely be one of those guys. But looking at more realistic options for the 49ers, some names just to throw out there: Carolina's Dante Jackson. He's got slot versatility. He can also play on the outside. He's a very young corner too. I think he's only 26 years old. So if the 49ers want to lock him up long term on an annual kind of value of somewhere around that $7 to $10 million range, he could be a cornerback for this team for years to come. Other guys, one guy I'm really a big fan of is Oakland's Casey Hayward, another veteran that the 49ers may look to address because they want leadership in that secondary. He could come on a 1-year deal, play very strong. I think he'd be a great scheme fit with his zone ability. He'd play a very strong corner for 1 year, and he could look to splurge when the TV deal hits next season. And then other small names, slot corners, Bryce Callahan, Sidney Jones, and potentially even guys like other players who are on the market as well, where you see this is a kind of a deeper class. You got Steven Nelson as well. So this is kind of a deeper corner class. So I think the 49ers definitely picked the right year to address cornerback in free agency, because there are a good amount of cornerbacks definitely on the market for the 49ers that are fitting within their price range.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously we know that 49ers haven't really put a premium on corner. So this is the most, I guess, the least likely position that they would go out and get, like spend, a high amount of money on, because they tend to just build through other aspects of their defense. So let's talk about some of those other aspects. I know you're pretty high on Jaquazi Tartt coming back. However, some people think because of his age, because this is probably his last big contract, and obviously with Mike McDaniel going to Miami and Saleh with the Jets, that love this guy as well, that he might be someone that walks in free agency because the 49ers just won't be willing to pay him the type of money. So what are some players that the 49ers could get at safety, and what would those contracts look like?
Yeah, definitely. And I think safety, like I know Jesse Naylor, a guy you talk to a lot, has been a huge proponent of bringing in Tyrann Mathieu. And I do think that that could potentially be a possibility, because like I said, the 49ers will probably have a little bit higher than 40 million in cap space to potentially bring in a guy like the Honey Badger on a 2-3 year extension or 2-3 year deal worth around 18 million a year. But more realistic options for the 49ers, there are guys like Terrell Edmonds, who is a fairly strong box safety for the 49ers. He's only 25, coming from Pittsburgh. He played a good, strong season of 17 games last season. He also has possessed some of the ball skills. Another guy that, if you want to play in the box, could be Jabril Peppers for the New York Giants. He had he kind of got out of his role with the New York Giants because of their overabundance of safety last season with Xavier McKinney taking over. So he could be a guy on a cheaper deal that the 49ers look to get. He's only 26 years old. Another guy could be Keanu Neal, who played for the Dallas Cowboys last season. And these are all box safeties. So if you want, there are a good amount of players where you can get box safeties, but you could also get safeties like Xavier Woods from Minnesota, who possessed the ball skills last year. He had 3 interceptions. So if you want those guys who could also play in coverage and potentially be playmakers, you could get guys like Xavier Woods. I do think that safety is a position they probably address in the draft as well, given how strong the safety class is. But those are some of the options that you can get in free agency at a cost the 49ers could afford this offseason.